You know what it doesn't depend on? Me. Because I'm always dependable. It Depends versus SYPIAC. At least I think that's how you say that last guy's name. Apparently these two homies are homies, and they've been playing random RTS games for a little bit now. However, they've also been playing Cosmonarchy Brood War for a little bit now. These games are probably about a week old, but I'm finally getting to them, and we'll be taking a look at each player's play, as they both signed up to the Ascension 7 qualifiers, which is pretty based. Now, as a result, I'm going to be trying to educate them or give them some tips on their play. Maybe I'll find out that since the week that this game was played in, they've already massively improved and they don't need this help anymore, but maybe it'll help somebody else in that case. We'll be beginning on Derelict, because apparently the first two games were boring, according to Depends. I only assume that means he lost. Let's try the Derelict match. So, this is an older version of Derelict, you can tell because the pings are everywhere, but I don't think it's going to be too consequential. It wasn't like a layout change, just some trigger fixes. It Depends will be spawning as the Cyan Terran in the bottom left against the red Zerg of SYPIAC in the top right. Yes, SYPIAC is a Zerg player. So, It Depends is a Chad individual. At least he radiates Chad energy. I don't know if his play will indicate the same. But every time I talk with this guy, there's some laughter. There's some ha-has, that's for sure. Now, one of the things that is definitely true of players when they're just starting out in CMBW is it's very clear pretty quickly where their base level of skill is, right? Because even if you have no idea what the units do, you'll probably know that you have to build a lot of workers, you'll probably know that you should expand, and you'll probably know that you should build a lot of units, right? So when we see those kinds of things happening in some of these games, then we kind of immediately know, okay, like what's your average skill level? Well, if you're Hupsaya and you build like an army of 50 Protoss dudes within like 10 minutes, it's like, oh, that's actually impressive macro. Like you've at least got that element down. So at least we know that sort of detail in that particular case, right? So it's kind of interesting anyway to just keep track of that. It Depends said that he is an F-rank 1000 MMR player or something. I feel like maybe that's exaggerating, but I have no idea what his actual level of skill is in that sense, like how it would match up as far as that goes. I think he probably plays better than an F-ranker, but I could be wrong. I haven't played Remastered in a while, so... Well, I've never played the Remastered ladder. I haven't played iCup in a while, I should say. Just really dating myself, Starcraft boomer here. We do have a Quasith pool coming for SYPIAC on the other side, and the first Maverick is already out from It Depends' Stockade. Yes, we renamed everything. Everything is renamed, except for, it's not actually everything, but it's kind of close to everything. We have Ministry instead of Command Center, for example, and Hatcherosk instead of Hatchery. It doesn't even have the T anymore. That's weird. Who would do that? Maybe they should just call everything Ultralisk or something. Well, this Quasith pool is nearly complete, or it is complete, but we don't actually have any units on the way just yet. Now a pair of Zeth, of course, is out. I'm looking at the sort of layout here, as obviously there was an expansion taken by SYPIAC in the meanwhile. I feel like I don't really have anything immediate to say, besides that sometimes I'll look at It Depends' base and he won't have a worker building, but I feel like maybe I'm just very occasionally. One thing I did notice, actually, I was playing against It Depends and also watching a game between him and Enozlix well, I guess early this morning, but late last night. And yeah, there's definitely some times where you're not building workers, right, buddy? But the other thing is that I've noticed he specifically timed it somehow magically where it was like, I'm about to finish this worker queue, like the progress bar is about to be done, and then I hit the button to build a Mason, and it like instantly lit back up. It was like a robot or something. It's really, like, you don't want to have that level of precision required just to build a worker. Zethar cores are gunned down in the street. That does happen sometimes. And yeah, only one of them is actually going to remain alive. Or is it? No, it died too. All right, see you, nerd. And the Hatcherosk is being built, of course, as a natural option there for the Zerg. They do like to expand faster. One thing that's still a little bit unclear, if you're going to be going up against pressure, which I think most good players will do versus Zerg in the early stages of the game, you may want to put your first hatch in your base. And you can see here, right, like the Quasilisks die. I don't think they killed anything for it, which is a little bit awkward. And the Mavericks are like not even really that damaged, in fact. So that's a little bit weird. And a Trojan is already out. So, there's some based things happening here where It Depends is trying to get fancy with it. He's forced out some defenses. The Mason, of course, gets gunned down by the Quasilisks, tickled to death. A very strange behavior to a strange way to die. But there's no proactive scouting here, and why would there be? He's just going to come through this, right? So this could actually very quickly surprise SYPIAC, and this is kind of like a pocket strat where it's like a drop rush where you don't have an expansion behind it. You don't have another stockade behind it. You don't really have that many units behind it. So you are in a little bit of a volatile position, but he's going to go for it anyway. And there's actually a Spraith being put down in both bases, which is, I wonder if maybe SYPIAC's already been Wraith cheesed or something, and that's why he's doing that. But the drop is here. The reaction time needs to be tested. He's not really paying too much attention to this. In fact, he still doesn't really seem to know. And there comes the unload. I wouldn't normally recommend unloading inside the worker line because the drill can just come in and kill you, but it doesn't really look like SYPIAC is interested in doing that. His reaction time now going to kick in, and he is going to go ahead and start waypointing some Quasilisks into it. You saw the Cyprian's shot getting hooked on the Hatcheros there because it does get blocked by armor, and so he will just get bopped. He killed a worker and a couple Quasis and lost his Trojan and all of those infantry, so you can see that absolutely can backfire. I think with a little bit better control, like if you land outside, it's not like he had any Hurricans in there. Firebats in CMBW are called Hurricans. They're a completely different unit, basically. And they have a new graphic, so it doesn't even seem weird to call them something different. And there's not actually that many workers here for SYPIAC, but like if he unloads over here, he just get absolutely bopped, right? Like there's so many worker deaths, right? Now, the Trojan dying to the Spraith is definitely a bit of a problem, since it means that no further drops can be made without you remaking the Trojan. There is going to be a double ministry behind this, because I feel like maybe it depends mismacroed or something. So he's now thinking, well, I should double expand. As Terran, it's going to be really hard to hold this versus Zerg, especially in the situation that you're in. So in this case, you would really want more military. You'd want to drop like 2-3 extra stockades, maybe drop 2 fulcrums instead. That's the same mineral cost. So yeah, that's absolutely an option here. He's going to go ahead and lift the ministry, despite just seeing a bunch of Quasis here, and try to land. And, puzzlingly enough, SYPIAC is going to allow it, although he could just charge back in now and just massacre these units, depending on how he takes his engagement. But it doesn't look like he's going to be doing that just yet. He's scouting around. Okay, no third, no cheeky, base, expanding right in front of me. He could be scouting a couple of the other bases. I don't mind, sending one Quasilisk to, each of the likely bases. And right now his rally points are such that he's got some Quasis sort of scattered around. He's got some idle workers behind the mineral line. I don't know what's that's all about, but the Zorka Shroud is also coming. He sends another one in. He sees, okay, there's a Watchdog, there's a Ministry. I definitely know what my opponent is doing now. He is going for an expansion. Yeah, I think SYPIAC would be in a much more commanding position if he had kept all of his Quasis either on the low ground, forcing them to be cleared out. You really want to force the Terran to work for it. Or, over here and then cut back in. And then, meanwhile, if you're worried about, oh, I don't know if he's expanded places, you just path your worker, or your, one Quasilisk to each location. Obviously, like I said, these people know each other, so there's definitely going to be some banter back and forth. Why not? Why not? They are both in the qualifier, so there's a chance that they end up meeting each other, depending on how the bracket looks. Mason coming over here to build a Watchdog, presumably, so that will at least afford him some vision of the cliff and give him some advance warning if there are going to be some air units. Although, at that point, usually it's too late. If there's a horde of air units descending upon you, and they're already at this location, what does that really amount to for time? His third ministry is up, and he's just using it as an extra worker production queue. Honestly, not a bad idea, I guess, if you're forced to, but you would want to land it somewhere and actually get it working. His ground army is going to go ahead and deal with this Quasilisk. It had 1 kill, but now it is kill. And a third base coming down here, slightly misplaced, I think, from SYPIAC. So, honestly, the worker pathing and rotation and stuff, the wandering, as it's called, is a lot better in CMBW, so misplacing it by 1 hex is probably not actually that big of a deal. But and hex is also the wrong technical term. I know some people are going to get annoyed by that. 1 tile. Misplacing it by 1 tile is probably not really that big of a deal. So some Nathracors are amassing, and the Bioforce will actually find them. I'm not really sure what all these wraiths are doing. This is just sort of like five wraiths being amassed in the corner of the map from the star pad. That's also in the corner of the map. They're going from corner to corner, and then they'll fly to this top right corner. And then maybe some of them will be destroyed, and then their wreckage will end up carried by the wind towards the bottom right-hand corner. The Nathracors are getting absolutely shredded by all of the Cyprians, so that's going to be fairly solid play coming out of ItDepends. But now he's move commanded instead of attack moved, and that's going to allow him to die. Yeah, just utter death. I feel like he could have done a little bit more damage to the Quasi stack. Obviously, I feel like there was just sort of this micro moment. We've seen a number of players, not just ItDepends, not just Biddy B in the quarterfinals against Hamster, just attack their own structures or their own units or something. And I don't know if it's because they're playing with quick targeting on, where you just push the button and it accepts whatever your cursor is over. So if you hit the attack command, instead of having to then like left click in order to target something manually. It just takes your cursor. That is an option that you can do in config. It does make it so that you can be more precise, more, I guess, more efficient if you are already more precise. But say no more. There are Lechezilisks here, and obviously there is no detection, despite there being a star pad forever. An Atlas is on the way. I guess that'll be a detector once it's finished. You can land the Watchdog onto the Lechezilisks, and it forcibly unburrows them. So that's kind of a cute move that not many people know about. Unfortunately, it's now being bodyguarded by the Quasis. A lot of Lechezilisks here. The Wraiths are now in, but there's Quasis. And I think this is a really, really rough situation for ItDepends, right? You didn't end up needing tier 2 if you're in SYPIAC's shoes. Your opponent lost a lot of their bio army and didn't really remake. He built every single unit he ever had off of the one stockade, but built 3 ministries. And that is probably the biggest sort of puzzler there, right? So ItDepends will concede the first match of the cast to SYPIAC. Apparently, you know, again, there were 2 matches played. I don't know what their outcomes were prior to this, but I was told to maybe skip those because they're boring. Again, come on, bro. I can read between the lines. But let's move on to the next match, which is, of course, going to be on Otherworld. And then we'll close on Pendulum by the looks of things, which is kind of interesting. We have SYPIAC, the Bronze Zerg, no comments, and he's on the bottom right of Otherworld. Going up against the White ItDepends, again, no comment, on the top right of Otherworld. So, this is a map that tends to favor more macro, but there is absolutely room for you to get really, really weird, really, really fast using the right-hand side of the map. We are on the updated version, so you will see, indeed, the tournament version of this. I did say these were played a week ago, but they were played on release. So remember that. Yeah, we're seeing that the behavior before. Like, it wasn't quite on the dot this time around, but you see that he doesn't cue the Mason towards the tail end of it. He's like, no, I just got to hit the button exactly when it's required. I don't know what that's all about. An extended sip has occurred. SYPIAC thought about building a Quasith pool, now he's going to. One thing that I think would be pretty useful for new players is coming up with like actual build orders or whatever. We sort of have those in like there's a forum, a Discord forum. I say that in air quotes because it doesn't work most of the time on the server, where there's like a thread for build orders for Terran, build orders for Protoss, build orders for Zerg. It's seldom used. And I don't know how out of date some of them are, because like I think one of them I came up with was a Fulcrum into Starpad for a very, very fast drop. But obviously that was before Starpads got increased in gas cost and Fulcrums got decreased in time cost. So who knows really what that's all about. A Derel will meet a Mason in the middle of the map. Always anticipating that. And yeah, I think the best thing that I can give advice for seeing ItDepends right now is that, like, I mean, obviously something that happens all the time is you micro something and then you float like 1,000 minerals and you're like, what do I do with this? And then, you know, that sort of thing. But so far, I mean, besides like I'm building my Mason a little bit late each time because I don't want to queue stuff. Although this is funny. yeah, you thought it was a 1v1, but I brought my cousin. Cyclops coming. Hatch first, expanding towards his opponent, interestingly enough. Obviously, it's not actually a hatch first because he's got a Quasith pool, but I meant first hatch, expanding towards his opponent. There you go. Now it makes sense. Zethar cores are out. They'll be scouted by the Mason, but is it really going to be too consequential? Probably not. They do move across the map a lot faster than the other units, and there is a Cyclops out, so, you know, something that Shambler believes, for example, if you see a Terran going Fulcrum first, you just start flooding them with, melee units or something, and they can't really deal with that. I feel like that's not always the case, but it'll be interesting to see. I thought maybe for a second that ItDepends was hunting for, like, burrow spots for the worker. He's actually vacated his premises entirely. He does have another Cyclops out. You know, obviously the Zethar cores aren't going to be able to do too much damage. Obviously the Zethar cores aren't going to be able to do too much damage. Obvious. I had to say that a few times because I was worried that Mason would die. All right, all good in the hood. SYPIAC thinking, hey, I should take this bait. Ah, I love the cheek. I would have just done it. I thought he had balls, but it turns out he didn't. He killed the Mason, at least. The Mason has no balls. Not anymore. A lot of Zethar cores being made, so it looks like he's going to commit to that. He could add Vorva cores. They obviously engage faster, and when they attack a target, they slow its attack speed and movement speed. So that's a pretty big deal. And we have way more production being built this time by ItDepends. He's not going to be delaying his attempted expansion or whatever, just by virtue of building a lot more production, which is always good. I mean, maybe not always good, but like, it's fine if you end up going for like 2-3 production structures before your expo, assuming you pressure, right? Like this gives you a lot more pressure. Now, at the same time, SYPIAC has not harvested any Vespene, and there's not really been that much of a scout to find this out. So now we are in a really, really difficult position here, where there's a lot of Vorvicors stacking on top of our Cyclops, but we have enough Cyclops that a lot of the Vorvicors are dying, and the Mason is even sort of like taking a lot of aggro somehow. I don't know what was going on there with the focus fire, but realistically speaking, we have enough Cyclops here that all of that just got flushed down the toilet. SYPIAC apparently has 2 military units, but I don't know where they are. Oh, they're the 2 Zethicors over here in the top right. Yeah, okay, makes sense. A Vestry being added. We have a couple more Cyclops, or a single Cyclops being added. 2 more on the way. It does take a little. It takes like 5, 6 Cyclops to bust a Circuit without losing everything in the process. It's mostly because their recursion rounds deals another 10 damage, and you know, okay, it's down to 7 damage because of the armor, right? There's no armor pen on this unit, but it's still pretty effective. Clerics being added as well, so you can start to heal your units without needing to wait for the repairs, which take a lot longer. And actually, he's just going to flank the Circuits, right? So that's pretty legit. He should move over to the right-hand side here. Some burrows have avoided pain, but the Cyclops is mobile enough that they slip inside behind the mineral line. A lot of quasis here. A Hydra then is on the way for SYPIAC. It's not a bad idea considering the situation. You know, you want some unit that can be a little bit more potent. Also, that Cyclops. That Cyclops was so close to dying. It took two hits from the quasis, it would have died. But, yeah. Awkward. Oh, My leg, according to the wireframe. Alright, see ya. At least SYPIAC's reaction time to instantly unburrow his workers is noted. Although, he's still got one that's burrowed. Yeah, so this is kind of the problem of, like, discounting the Cyclops. It is pretty effective against crowds of units. And when you stack on top of it, right? And Vorvs want to sit on top of things because they slow things. So it's not even like you can count on your opponent to kite backwards. You know what I mean? Because the Vorvs slow them. So it's an interesting combo. A Star Pad being added. A Ministry is being added. So again, I think that ItDepends has done enough macro damage to slow this down. He's like forced a different tech structure out. The units from the Hydrith Den are more expensive. His Cyclops are slowly being repaired. He's got a Cleric and another Cyclops and another Cleric and 2 other Cyclops moving out. He doesn't have any defenses at home. So a little bit interesting there. The Anchor is being staffed by Zerg here. Exchange students. SYPIAC now making a lot more workers, but his only 2 military units are once again those Iziricors. He doesn't even have more in the eggs coming. I am not holding alt right now. So this is still very dangerous territory here, but he's counting on the Circuits to zone away the Cyclops. He doesn't have one in the main. So whether or not that bluff gets called by ItDepends is really going to be all important. He's got a Watchdog coming in the background, just wants to keep watch of this area, you could say. And this is enough Cyclops to easily bust at least 1 Circuit, probably both of them. Again, there's no military here to assist. We do have some Hydras coming. Yeah, okay, I'll just start attacking this. This feels really, really dangerous for SYPIAC to be in a situation for. He's actually pathed his Hydra on a move command in, and his other units are sort of like on an attack move. He could unload the Anchor and maybe bring them back. He's got a bunch of Kagrins here, but they're not going to mutate into anything, and I feel like, I don't know, SYPIAC seemingly didn't pay attention or something, and now he's realized, oh shit, they're in my main. They're in my brain. And I think ItDepends is going to easily walk away from this. So, if you're in SYPIAC's shoes here, and you're fighting against a situation where you're dealing with Cyclops, how do you deal with Cyclops? Well, the idea of going Iziricor is not a bad one. You can go Vorvicor, but when they stack up to this number, even just 4 or 5 or whatever, are a pretty big deal. I don't know why that's a Sprite. That's a little weird. Quasis Bull being snapped, yeah, whatever. It's not really going to be amounting to too much because Quasis don't do very well versus these kinds of units anyway. Some attempted attack moves, but it's just decolliding. LMAO Broodlord. And yeah, the Clerics are actually going to out-sustain the Quasis as well. You can't really even focus fire one of them down with 6 because he's got double Cleric. GG is called. Yeah, I look at this and I think to myself, okay, ItDepends goes for this mech push because he's thinking, well, my opponent really likes to go for Quasith first, and Quasith first is meta right now, but you basically, like, Zerg will very rarely, against an opponent that's actually trying to pressure them, very rarely will Zerg be able to get away with staying on one tech node until tier 2, and then diversifying after that. They will need to go for Hydrith or Zorkis at some point in the game. You can even go Hydrith first in some cases if you want to, although that's not really been mapped out yet. Everybody always goes Quasith into Hatch or Hatch into Quasith. I've not seen any other build orders just yet, so maybe that will sort of rear its head later on when people start to get a bit more experimental. But as I've sort of like said a few times now, really what it comes down to is balancing your military versus your economy. Zerg is a really hard race to do that in by comparison when you're actually being pressured. If you're not being pressured, it's super easy. You just build more workers, and then eventually you get to a critical mass and you A-move your opponent. But in the case of, Terran versus Zerg in this context, you can absolutely pressure and trade much more cost efficiently versus like the one structure type, right? Cyclops deal very, very well with Nather cores, with Quasilisks, with Zethar cores, with Vorva cores. There's really not really a good option to fight the Cyclops out of the Quasith pool. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't want to build any Quasith pool units versus Mech Terran, because you still want some kind of front line, or maybe you still want the scout from the Naths or something, but it does mean that you want to try to engage upon the Cyclops with Hydras, or maybe Lakizilisks, or maybe Gorger cores, something that will deal splash damage, or something that will deal enough upfront damage to just snipe them down before too many shots can make. And the Hydralisk is fairly fast and nimble, so it's actually going to have a movement speed advantage over the Quasilisk. Maybe you can dive in, slice in, cut up one or two of the Cyclops, and then fall back before too many of the recursive rounds hit. That's if you want to take that kind of engagement, and you want that more heavy ground army for busting structures later on. But the Lakizilisks, they can do a lot of damage. It's a question of whether or not you can keep them alive, because if there's any detection, the Cyclops can also kill them. But, like, that's going to give you some kind of option. Obviously, if you attack with Izira cores, the Hydralisks won't be attacked because the Izira cores will be taking a lot of the damage, and they'll be taking a while to die, compared to, say, a Quasilisk or a Zethar core or whatever, where they just get chewed through, and then the Cyclops are free to attack your backline. So, that's definitely a case. I also think that, like, the static defense wasn't a bad idea, but expanding to that location when there's two separate paths that are pretty close together, and then putting static defense only covering one of those paths, it's very easy to see the path to victory there if you're in ItDepends' shoes. So let's move on to checking out the last replay in the set that we'll be casting. It is Pendulum by Veek7, a map that is not currently in the pool, but as far as the top dog competitive pool, but may be in the future. We have the yellow Terran in the top left of ItDepends against the deep periwinkle SYPIAC Zerg in the top right. And now I sip. And now I sip. I actually sipped a bit too much there. That's okay. Just means I'll pee later. It does tend to happen when you're a human. We have pea-colored ItDepends. I was thinking about this. I don't know if it was quite my jam for Mesk to moan about piss all the time on the broadcast. So I just imagine somebody checking out the broadcast and thinking, oh, this is really cool. And then just piss. But, that's all right. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you wet yourself. And, yeah, there's actually some gas being harvested here pretty early on by ItDepends. I wonder if that means he's going to be going for his patented bio drop. This is a map that can theoretically favor air because it has this back base that is secure to everything other than air. Zerg obviously like to have those kinds of free bases. And it looks like that's exactly where SYPIAC is going to go. So it does feel like it's drop bait in that particular sense. But we will see. Like, I'm not seeing a Fulcrum. I'm seeing him just continuously make units that cost minerals and stuff. That makes a lot of sense. So it looks like it's going to be more gas than that because he's continuously producing units, right? And the star pad is only 100 minerals. So I do feel like this will be a star pad follow-up to the initial situation. Does he want to put down an anchor? What is he thinking here? He's just sort of moving around. I feel like there's some indecision here from ItDepends, but we'll see what he's up to. 2 more returns and he'll have enough for a star pad. His scout is on the way. It's a Kagran follow-up after the hatch. So this is already very non-standard. Star pad. Star pad. Okay, star pad and Quasith pool go down at around the same time. That's not something you normally see. But that's just the delay here where this Kagran was made. I guess it was to allow some Kagran to spread by the ramp, because he's not going to be taking this low ground base anytime soon, and that makes his whole position a little bit more volatile. I was talking to Veek about moving this bridge up a little bit so you could be more defensible here, and maybe expanding this angle of attack a little bit, because it's very constrained right now, and it didn't seem like Veek was too receptive to that idea, but that was something that I was debating or thinking about. Like, it feels like that could help the map be a little bit more defensible. But it's just a lot. It's a lot of static defense. Now, you don't normally want to build that, particularly as Zerg, because they cost a worker. And you don't really want to lose workers in the early stages of the game, because that encourages you to build more workers. And then you don't have that much military. And if your opponent just walks out around the map, or, in this particular case, goes for a drop, then you're really, really shit out of luck. There's also a lot of idle workers here, and one of them has pinned the Mason in the corner and is just going to absolutely slap it to death. And there is a third Kagrin. Is there going to be a fourth? Oh, there's a fourth Kagrin. Is there going to be a fifth Kagrin? No, it looks like there's going to be some gas instead. Well, meanwhile, the star pad has completed, and it will be a Trojan first. It will be a Maverick drop by the looks of things, and I think ItDepends can maybe just go for an expansion on the back of this. We'll see what he wants to do. Has exactly enough Mavericks to fit into this Trojan. Yeah, this is a very strange situation where SYPIAC is very hell-bent on being super defensive. Generally, you don't want to do this because you're... Okay, you've got a couple of units at the very least, like you've got a pair of Quasis, but, you know, the drop can obviously do a lot here. It looks like he's scoping out whether or not the Spraith is going to see him. I don't know if the Quasis are... Yeah, I'm not sure that he actually paid too much attention to that, but Quasis are here. There's just a lot of random stuff happening over here, but yeah, this base is just going to get shut down immediately. You know, it didn't really matter what was in there as long as there was enough. He's doing his best to lose as many Mavericks as possible, but that's okay. True. Very true. Yep. In we go. And out we go. LMAO, dude. And yeah, with that out of the way, the Fulcrum is coming. Okay. So he did do some economic damage. He kills, I think, 3 or 4 Droleths. I can't quite tell. I think there was only 4 on the space, but I thought there was maybe 5. Either way, he kills a couple. Obviously, a lot more workers got expended on defenses in the first place, so it's just like super strange where SYPIAC would normally have way more of an economy and also way more military units instead of spending all the larvae on workers to spend the workers on structures, if you guys get what I mean. So absolutely something that is, I would say it set him behind. An Anciel is on the way, a Watchdog as well, and we've got Ministry followed up by Fulcrum. So maybe this game will stabilize after this. I'm not 100% sure. But definitely a strange location for both of our players to be in. I feel like ItDepends could just walk up here and you know, start airlifting units across like this area where you can actually attack the Quasi's back. By the way, if you're Terran and you're ever trying to siege somebody cheekily, you can build an anchor and it will neutralize cliff advantage. It'll make your units have the exact same range bonus. So, could try to do that. Build the anchor, lift it off, land it there, whatever. I don't think we'll see that too often, but it's a funny idea. Vestry adding on. It's going to be, I guess, Cleric Cyclops once again. We'll see what this where he goes with the Ministry. I think he would probably expand on the low ground. More units figuring out what they want to do. More static defense. My brother. You are building a lot of static defense, but you have 1 worker. Now 3 workers on the minerals at this base. I guess SYPIAC is going to be turtling into a tier 2 location and see if he can win that way. Obviously, ItDepends has way less Vespene, having built the Vestry add-on and continuously pumping Cyclops. But he is harvesting Vespene with 6 workers, so there is that, and he does have this base after all. He ends up taking the island, or the back base, I guess. Not quite an island, but an island enough. You'll notice, by the way, the mini-map on this map is very, very small compared to the actual border, and that is a default StarCraft issue, since Veek ended up using a map size that was slightly too big on the width. So, as a result, we get this. Now, I've seen ItDepends do this a number of times. He builds a ministry, and then he builds another ministry. And, you know, I had some words to say to Nablime semi-recently, although I don't believe that cast is released yet when you're watching this. It feels like a lot of Terrans will get to a certain point where they have, like, say, a ministry or, say, a starport or whatever. And they've invested a lot of money into this. They've invested a lot of time into this. And then they'll just double down and do some more thing that doesn't give them a military advantage. In this game, it is unlikely to actually happen or matter, but... oh, hey, this wasn't a static defense structure after all. It was a Hatcheros. All right, we have double Anseal. It's not protecting the actual units that are under attack. Now it is. And the first Circuit is destroyed. So, using some creativity here to step on the Circuit-focused enemies, but the Spraiths are adding a lot of damage to this to burst down the Anseals, so that's a little bit awkward. It looks like finally the... oh, he made a Spraith instead of a Circuit. He fat-fingered it. Well, that one's going to be a Circuit at least, but it'll just die. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Hey, we've got a Lekesilisk in the queue, but it takes a long time. We got some Quasis here. We got to evacuate the workers. No, they're being stepped on. Oh, shit. Quickly, put them into the natural. Yeah, okay. The static defense, like, I thought it would hold out a little bit better than that, but he didn't have that many Quasilisks, and the double ant seal definitely made a huge difference there. Not great focus fire here from SYPIAC, but he is slowly whittling down the number of units. He's trying to focus fire the Maverick, it looks like. Oh, no. He was spreading damage. He could have killed that Cyclops and then killed the Maverick, but it's all right. We've got the Lekizilisk. Surely it won't die. It died. Don't worry. We've got another Lekizilisk. Surely it depends. We'll step on it. He's actually dealing damage to it from the spray. Oh, it died. Absolutely destroyed, honestly. I feel like SYPIAC will have some choice words for It Depends telling me to skip the first two games, because I assume It Depends just got bopped in those. He's got a lot of idle Masons in the top left. We have even more Lekizilisks. Please don't lose another Lekizilisk. Ah, thank goodness. He'll keep them alive. Well, he could take these Lekizilisks and move them across the map and do a lot of damage with them. There is an ant seal here, but there's not very many military units. In fact, half of his military units are currently screaming through the base and dying. The other half are ant seals and other such things. Now that's crazy. Now, will SYPIAC sense that he can maybe move across? He's been forced to build a lot of military units. Will he just move across the map? He has a lot of Quasis. Well, a lot. He has 10 Quasis, and he has 4 Lekizilisks. And now he's building workers behind it. He also has 3 Lekizilisks in his base. And Antseal just gets slapped. He's engineering. He's updating the solar panels here. So, yeah, there was like a lot of time where this base wasn't mining. And this base obviously wasn't mining that much either. He's just going to preemptively lift it off. He's adding fulcrums behind it. Do I see an Atlas anywhere? I do not see an Atlas anywhere. So did not tech up behind that. Zerg is taking his time. SYPIAC not too interested in pushing forward right now. Taking better position on the ramp. There's still a Lekizilisk just sort of smelling the flowers. The third base being taken for SYPIAC, which will put him ahead of his opponent despite all of that macro and despite all of that economic damage. These anchors were finished, but one of them is just going to die. Yeah, a little bit of a discombobulated defense here as he's adding more Cyclops. He has the ant seals for detection. Should probably borrow these other Lekizilisks, and there they go. You kind of want to keep them like almost a Psystorm range apart if you can, because that's kind of similar to the Cyclops situation with the splash. So 2 of the Lekizilisks are already dead, and one of them is left. We have 1 left. The Watchdog will die. An anchor is trying to find a landing spot, but... Oh my god, it actually fits there. Yeah, that's right, because the fulcrum is smaller. So now he can put his Cyclops into the anchor. Surely. Okay. So this attack is also foiled. Quasi. Slapped. Okay, well, at this point, SYPIAC can just pump workers and go straight to tier 2 if he wants. He's pretty close to the gas, but it looks like he wasn't mining for most of that, and he spent a lot of his Vespene on Lekizilisks. So there's that. This Quasilisk is now a turret. Oof. Absolutely oofed. Alright. The Watchdog being reconstructed. The Ministry can now lift off. I did like that he, It Depends does it. He tries to wall. He does try to do stuff like that, so there's definitely a real possibility that that could happen. You know, that he could do that just to sort of cluster his opponents down a specific path, and then his Cyclops can reign supreme. Quasilisks are not going to be doing too well over here, not spreading out, and yeah, as a result, they just end up getting absolutely bodied. Don't worry, here comes a worker. Ah, okay. So Zoroastrians have been made. Tier 2 is surely on the way somewhere. No, never mind. He doesn't have the minerals. Tier 2 is almost done for our Terran brother. It depends. So what will he be doing next? He's got 3 fulcrums. You would think he was going to use those for something. Alright, so Cyclops are also kind of good versus the Zoroastrians because they just kill the Ropers really fast, but it looks like It Depends was caught sleeping because his ant seals were off in the distance, and now he's just getting tickled. Yeah, when I said they were kind of good, I meant, they have to kind of attack, so more workers randomly in the middle of nowhere. Iris is on the way. Zoriusthalettes have chased all the way to the enemy base. Now they can still stay alive a lot, especially if they're split up and so they're not taking so many Cyclops shots, but yeah, as you can see, that didn't really happen. And there's actually, there are 13 Cyclops. And a single Ahmed, of course. Why not? Well, I need to sip again. I promise you that's water and not vodka. Too early in the day. I am looking forward to seeing these two duke it out against other players in the qualifiers, and I do think that some videos like this where I go over their plays hopefully are instructive. I think the static defense focus early on from SYPIAC was misplaced. Not in terms of like the actual placement. I think you just don't want to do that generally. There's a Mason with this army. Battle Masons. Actually, there's 3 Masons. Holy shit. You know, when I was a kid, I used to think Masons or SCVs were combat units because they had more HP than the Marine. I was like, oh, this guy's going to be based. I'll just use him. Of course, nobody knew what based was back then, but... There's at least been a decent number of macro hatches going out of this game. I guess he could have more. He's got a lot of Vespine, not very many minerals. His army is also misplaced, and he's got nothing to protect this location. This is where, you know, throwing a single Quasilisk over here so that it gets attacked and gives you some sort of warning would have been nice, but at this stage, he still was able to deal some pretty good damage, and he's got a Lechizilisk coming. It's going to help zone away. Another Lechizilisk. Another Lechizilisk. There's still the one that's unburrowed just hanging out over here. Mineral saturation in the main is very low. Same could be said for the third base. Right now, we've got pretty decent saturation over there, so let's go ahead and add these to the... Oh my goodness, why did I look there? Adding a Watchdog or 2 over here. Once you're at tier 2, you can add Sentinels as well. Not a bad idea if you want to try to camp a location and really get some value out of it. Tier 2 has been finished for a while, but SYPIAC has not built anything. He wants to go straight to tier 3. The world's slowest tier 2, but the world's fastest tier 3. That's not true. When I was fighting Dead Infested, I had tier 3 at like 12 minutes. It was really weird. That's how you teach somebody to pressure you, by the way. We do have some Phalanxes out. Obviously, Palladiums have thus been added to the Fulcrums back at home. He's actually restructured his base to make it look a little bit more sensible. Dude, go it. Straight to tier 3. Do it. You might not survive, but it would be worth it. Instead, he's going to try to pull his Lechizilisk forward. He has a very meaty front line of Zorius. And the Cyclopses have fallen in number. So the less Cyclopses you have, the more value your Rocors are going to get. More Lechizilisks have made it to the front line. Or no, those are the same ones. They've just repositioned. Meanwhile, this Hatrosk is being shelled, and the Quasilisk died. There's also a worker up there. He still didn't go for tier 2. SMH. At least he's building the Mutat Spire right in his face. Stayed alive just long enough to get that return spine. If you kill it before the return spine, it doesn't actually return. So that's pretty good. It's actually just Phalanxes right now. Like, the other ground army is 2 Cyclops and 2 Goliaths. Oh, and a Watchdog. This could absolutely be slapped. He should engage with his circuits here. He should, like, just charge forward. Because absolutely the Zorius can do some damage here, but it looks like, unfortunately, he maybe mistimed it. He's got some Gorgs out. Not great anti-aero over here, right? So that's absolutely a big deal. There is a Watchdog over here. Should probably be trying to focus down the Goliaths. Looks like he's going to do so now. Fall back to the Watchdog. Not a bad idea, but he's still just narrowly out of range. Another Lechizilisk is out. I thought maybe I saw something, but it was actually the Spraith attacking the Antseal. Thought something was going on over there. Okay, the Goliaths have fallen. It's just the Cyclops now for anti-air as well as the Watchdogs. This is a dangerous position to be in, but there are Mutas and Protethilors coming. They are very, very good units for this situation, particularly the Mutas. Phalanxes can defeat Protethilors pretty easily, but it's very down to the engagement. Antseal's still here for detection. The Watchdogs are not going to be enough to deal with the Mutas. There's just too many of them. Off they go. They're kind of focusing on the wrong target, though, and they're just sitting there. There's only the 2 Cyclops. You can just kill those. Yeah, I think he got tunnel visioned on trying to deal with the... Well, this is funny. Battle Masons, once again, adding more Watchdogs. Why not? And he lost the Mutat Spire because he built it in front of his opponent's face. There's also that Lachizilus. 2 Lachizilusks up there that could have definitely helped with the fight. I wonder if he's just lost his nerve. He's adding more Gorgs. He canceled the Protathalors, interestingly enough. Obviously, they could have done some really heavy damage to the Phalanxes from the high ground. And why not put a Mantle right in front of your opponent's face? Yes, where the workers fight. A bloody battle. But they're cheating on the It Depends side. They brought Clerics to heal them. Still, a couple of them died anyway. Zephyr Core is not a bad idea since there's not really much of a front line, but suddenly from downtown, there's some Cyclops. And there's so many Watchdogs that the Gorgs can't actually engage on this army. He needed artillery or range or something. He made the Calcure Pond, but he never made any Calculusks or anything like that. I mean, he built this in front of you, so it's not really in the case of movable, but yeah. He also rallied like 12 Masons into this battle. Well, honestly, even at the very end there, I kind of expected SYPIAC to somehow clutch it out, because I just wasn't, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but it just felt inevitable that, like, It Depends would walk up, and, like, at some point, SYPIAC would just build some tier 2 units. He had enough gas for tier 3. He could have done, well, the tier 3 wouldn't have helped him there, but, I mean, maybe it would have. It took a long time for It Depends to do anything, but I feel like you then have to build a tier 3 structure and so on and so forth, so probably not. But you know, that's okay. This is project familiarity. You're still sort of like figuring things out. Obviously, not the level of skill that we see, for example, in the Ascension playoffs, but you know, the kind of thing that you'd like to see as people learn the project and try to pick up the fundamentals and stuff. So yeah, for SYPIAC, definitely don't invest so much in static defense in the early stages of the game. You're gonna want to scout your opponent to see if you even need to. That's where like sending the Droleth initially is good, obviously. Follow it up with maybe a Nathracor pair. You can look around, see if there's a star pad somewhere. Obviously force your opponent to, like, you know, position aggressively. And if your Nathracors get zoned away from scouting, you can at least still, like, patrol them somewhere in between the bases, like over his back base, for example, or over that space in between. That will give you a heads up on the Trojans if they're coming, if it's going to be a drop or something like that. And, you know, if you kind of know somebody's style and you know that they're going to drop you, you can put a Circuith, a Spraith in each base or whatever. That's a little bit less egregious, but taking the back base and then trying to hold the ramp, but then not being able to hold the ramp because maybe you didn't expect the Anseal Cyclops to do so well, that ends up biting into you because you don't have as many workers, which means you don't have as much military, which means you end up falling if your static defense isn't enough to hold, which it wasn't in that case. So that really set him behind, and then It Depends had like a very strange meme strategy. There's a lot of funny battles back and forth. Hopefully you guys learned some things or two from this particular video. And yeah, we'll be back later on with some more Castover, so stay tuned.